Hello, everyone. Thank you very, very much for your time. I know how busy everyone can be, especially kicking off their professional careers. But I'd like to welcome everybody to the Thriving from the Start Network's first event for 2026. It's very exciting to say the least. We're very excited to have you all here. And we are so excited as well to explore the topic of early career shifts and turning your mind from study to work, which can be a very big change. Now, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge, of course, the traditional owners of the various lands upon which we'll all meet today, depending on where you're calling in from, and I'd pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, guys, my name is Joseph, call me Joey, and I am a general stream grad here at Qantas, as well as a member of CMHAA's Early in Careers Committee. And I have the opportunity and the privilege today to be the facilitator for today's discussion, as well as hopefully provide my early careers input on today's topic. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, the Corporate Mental Health Alliance of Australia is a business-led and expert-guided member organisation dedicated to providing mentally healthy workplaces for all people. The Early in Careers Committee is a subsection of the CMHAA. The EIC committee was founded to specifically support those starting off in their career, given the particular challenges that groups face to ensure the maintenance of a good mental health and well-being. Now, the Thriving from the Start Network is an initiative from the EIC committee which seeks to bring young professionals together to help achieve that goal. We are super excited to have you all here today and for the first Connect session of 2026. And we believe it is a great way to kick off the year with such a relevant topic. Now, the topic for today, and to frame the topic, if we could move on to slide 2. Now, this time of year is usually the season where grads are starting their programs, people are stepping into a new role, and we're all coming back with new goals, new expectations. Of course, everyone has their New Year's resolutions. I'm already behind on those. It's only 3 months in, but what can you do? So today is more about the focus on making that transition from study into work, feeling a bit less daunting and a lot more doable for everyone. So as people move into work, as people move from study into the early years of work, their biggest challenge often is that mindset shift rather than the actual technical skills themselves. In education, progress is built around clear deadlines, structured guidance, short bursts of effort where you're working towards a visible finish line, such as finishing that assignment, taking that final exam just before holidays. Whereas all of a sudden you move from that into work, and work feels very different, where it's more of a marathon rather than a sprint. You need to chop it off bit by bit. There are fewer obvious finish lines. Expectations are often less explicit, and success often means getting comfortable with ambiguity and taking initiative yourself. Now, on top of that, you're adjusting to full-time hours, where it's not just about being busy, but sustaining focus and sustaining that energy and emotional capacity across not only every day, but now 9 to 5 across the entire week. And for many people, that's one of the biggest shocks. It's not that the work is harder, it's that the effort has to be more continuous. And that's personally something that I have had to adjust to as well, coming from study to work, that shift of, oh my God, I've got to get up at 7 a.m. every day, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. And that is by far one of the biggest shifts I've had. Now, because of this early career employees, I'm just learning what to do. They're learning how to pace themselves, how to work with ambiguity, and how to manage their energy so they can perform consistently without burning out. And this isn't something you learn overnight. It's a journey, learn over time and through experience. And today, to help us break down and make this experience and these skill sets more practical, we're going to hear from our 2 incredible panelists, drawing on both their professional experience and lived experiences to share their skill set, to share their strategies and advice and reflections as to how they can help you navigate this very difficult transition with more confidence and sustainability. Now, first things first, I'd like to introduce Cristina, who is very privileged to join us today. She is a talent program specialist at Allianz. Cristina, please, would love to hear more about you.
Thanks, Joey. Hey, everyone. Okay, so as Joey said, I am currently at Allianz. I manage the grad program here, as well as interns and cadets. So basically, anyone under the age of 30, come to me. I've been here for, I think this is my 6th year, so it's gone quite quickly. And then prior to this, I was at IBM doing the same thing on a much bigger scale, though. So I just want to say special shout out to my Allianz. Hopefully, some of the grads are on here and alumni. And on a personal note, I guess I am a mother of 3 children, so super busy, 2 teenagers and a 7-year-old. So my second unpaid job is pretty much Uber driver to all the activities all week, which is fun. But looking forward to a great first session to all the people on the call today. I'll hand over to Alexander.
Thank you, and thanks, Joey, for setting us up for success here. I'm Alex. I'm a solution engineer at Microsoft now. I've been at Microsoft for about 5 years, and I before that did an internship at EY, which was my first foray into corporate world. Then came into Microsoft through an internship program. There were 20 of us, so a fairly small cohort, and then went into a grad role following that, where we were with a few less than the 20 people, maybe 15 people. And we really navigated those early days together. So I'm keen to share a little bit more about that today. Now, having been here for 5 years, I can look back comfortably and see where I went wrong and where I absolutely did not. Sorry, where I went right and where I did not. But over to you, Joey.
Thank you for that, guys. And you know what, Alex, you're right. Hey, it's the benefit of hindsight. Hey, more time, of course, more experience. And Cristina, I can't even imagine the effort of having essentially what is 2 jobs. Now, before we are lucky enough to hear from our 2 panelists, I want to briefly call out some of the key mindset shifts that early career employees experience. Could potentially experience as they move from study into their full-time careers. Now, you don't need to relate to all of these topics or changes, but some may feel familiar, some may not feel familiar, but typically, there's this idea that work is a marathon rather than that sprint. There's no one deadline you have to meet. It's a rolling deadline, many different workflows that you're trying to manage all at the same time. We spoke about this before, going from that clear structure to this more ambiguous structure where you kind of have to guide your own path and your own workload. And I think this is a big one as well, going from solo achievement to shared outcomes, rather than submitting that one assignment and getting your results back straight away. It is truly a team effort. And I'm sure Alex and Cristina, having been at such large organizations such as Allianz and Microsoft, will be able to talk to that. So we're going to run through a quick poll to get some audience engagement. I know we've got a lot of people on the call, so we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. But we're going to try and get a sense of this mindset shift, which feels most relevant to you right now. Of course, there's no right or wrong answer here, but just choose the one that you resonate with the most as to where you are currently in your early career. So in that way, we can kind of structure this session and this panel towards you. So we'll give you guys 30 seconds. You can see, hopefully that's come up. Please shout out if it hasn't, comment if it hasn't, but there should be 6 answers there as to which mindset shift feels most relevant to you right now. As we said, no right or wrong answers. If you feel comfortable answering, we'd love to get some audience interaction here. So interestingly, I think hopefully there should be enough time for everyone to answer. I can see the results are still changing a tiny bit. Interestingly, the first response, we've had a bit of a tie for the top 3 responses, but I think just edging it out there, the biggest mindset shift that most people have encountered is the fact that you now go from knowing the answers to now this mindset of continuous learning. And I could not agree more. You go from, finishing that subject at uni, finishing that assignment, finishing that exam and being like, yep, tick, I know it. Whereas at work, depends on the project, depends on the deadline. That mindset shift is happening constantly. You're continuously learning, and that learning journey doesn't stop. So I think that is a big hurdle where all of a sudden, you're at uni and you're smashing it, and all of a sudden now you're in a workspace where there's quite specialized knowledge, and you have to try continuously learn to catch up with that. Secondly, there was from waiting for direction to proactive contribution, and as we spoke about before, right? It's about having that shift to where all of a sudden the assignment's laid out for you, you've told what to do by the professor or the lecturer, and now all of a sudden it's, yep, here's what we need you to do, go do it. And that can be very daunting. And hopefully, I'm sure Alex and Cristina will have some answers to how to overcome those challenges in our Q&A, which we're about to kick off. So thank you very much for those answers, guys. They're really informative to helping us shape some of this discussion, this upcoming discussion. Now, let's kick things off with you, Alex. When you think back to your own transition, I know you said about 5 to 6 years ago now, what was, I guess, the one mindset shift that really surprised you, and what impact did it have on you and your career?
Yeah, the one that really stands out to me now, and I don't think I knew this at the time, is everything before work was so short-term focused. And I mean, you're in school and you're thinking about the end of year, and then you kind of get to year 12 and you're thinking about, getting into uni or tertiary education. And then you get into that and you focus on exams, and then you finish with exams and you focus on getting an internship or a grad role. And then you go there and you're working at this incredible pace your whole time. And I kind of started, and this is when I started at Microsoft, and I was just a little bit lost. I was like, oh, so like, what am I working toward now? Like, what is the thing? And there was no finish line that I could see. It was kind of just all very vague. So I struggled with that for a little bit, and then maybe about 6 months in, where I just felt like I wasn't achieving anything because I wasn't knocking over goals. I had a conversation with my manager. I was like, well, what is that from here? And it became clear to me that it was like a promotion in 1.5 years is what I was working toward. And I had a big existential crisis. I was like, well, what am I doing with my life? And then I just had to learn to understand that is what it's like. And there isn't a need to be working towards something. In fact, you can pause for a moment and take gratitude and comfort in other areas of your life. And that's when I really found that expressing gratitude and like doing more things for me really got me through, and understanding what the delineation is between what I do for work and my career and to make money to live, and what I do for me and my well-being and to make me happy. So yeah, I was really grappling with that idea that it's a marathon, not a sprint, it's a marathon over time.
It's, what, you raised a really interesting point in there as well, when you said, the next goal is kind of that promotion in a year and a half, and there's no guarantee that you reach that goal either, right? With the ambiguity of all our workplaces, unlike uni where, you work hard, you get the mark, tick, done, next. There's this big shift into that realm of ambiguity. It's really interesting. Now, I guess, Cristina, with your lens, I'd really love to understand, speaking on that point of ambiguity, what, I guess, as grads and as interns in our early careers, why do these shifts and why does this ambiguity feel so challenging? What's happening to our bodies, our brains, our minds during these big shifts and these big transitions?
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Alexander. I do see that in sort of all the grads and interns that start. Like, you're all so driven and really want to hit that finish line. And I'm like, guys, relax. You've been here a week. You need to just settle, find out where the best coffee is first before you kind of think about these ambitious finish lines. But I love it. I love that about grads. So I think the transition feels really hard, as I've just sort of echoed from what Joey and Alexander have sort of touched on, is that, it's not necessarily the grads lacking capability. It's because so many things are changing for you guys at once. Like, I see it and I respect that. Like you said, you're moving from a very structured environment at uni into a workplace full of ambiguity. You know, you're expected to ask questions. You're expected to prioritize. No one's telling you what to do. You have to make judgment calls earlier than, you know, hey, this is your deadline. It's no, make a judgment call now or within a few hours. And again, there's no clear finish lines, as you've both said. The other thing is, I guess, feedback. I don't think grads are quite prepared for feedback in the workplace when they start. Feedback is ongoing. Even at my age, I get so much feedback, and, you know, I take it and I build on it. You know, it can feel very personal when you're not used to sort of direct feedback, but, you know, it is not ever personal, right? It is just constructive sort of advice, I'd like to say. And then you adding to that sort of like a social side of unwritten rules, you know, like Joey said, you're having to adjust to full-time work, going from waking up at 10 a.m. every day to now waking up at 7 a.m. And it's a lot, right? It's a lot to sort of deal with at once. So I think for all grads, I think when things feel uncomfortable, don't think like something's wrong. Just take it in. It is a sign that you're learning, and that you're learning how the real work actually works. You know, you're in the real world. So yeah, I think just be kind to yourselves.
And I think that's a big kind of takeaway as well, where these the grads and the interns tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves to be the best, to make sure all their work's perfect, cross the I's, cross the T's, dot the I's. And I think that's something that I've had to quickly adjust to, where realistically, you're not going to know everything. You need to be able to make those mistakes, be comfortable with making those mistakes in order to learn, in order to adjust that learning curve and to grow. So I think that's something that I've really been trying to focus on, is being willing to ask questions, accepting the fact that realistically you might not know everything, and that's okay, being comfortable in that ambiguity. So I guess, Cristina, in your time working with the interns, with grads at Allianz and your other careers as well, what do you think, I guess, are the key skills that make the biggest difference between and I guess the key skills that make early career professionals stand out?
So I think for me, the grads who I meet who stand out, I think they aren't necessarily the ones that sort of know the most, that they're the brightest, that have all the HDs at uni. They're the ones who learn the fastest and are open to sort of being curious and asking questions. So the grads and interns that I think tend to excel are the ones that ask good questions. And when they get the feedback, they apply them and they show progress over time. Like, it doesn't have to be instant. They're comfortable with some ambiguity, which I know is super difficult, but, rather than waiting for the perfect instructions from your manager, which you will never, ever get, they kind of just think about it, keep things moving, fail, and then try again. I think communication, as Alexander said, when he did sort of speak to his manager, it's sort of a light bulb kind of went on, and he realized, hey, I am not doing anything wrong, and this is kind of how it is now. Communicate and ask for help early. Like, honestly, managers are there to help you. Grad managers are here to support you guys, so just ask. Showing self-awareness as well, so responding well to feedback, kind of managing the energy and learning workplace norms over time is also important. But like I said, don't, kind of think of hitting it out of the ballpark straight away. It's not so much about being brilliant, but it's more about being consistent. I think that's my takeaways from seeing many grads come through the doors.
Now, Alex, I'd love to bring you in here. And I guess from your experience in a very fast-moving tech space, tech environment, very different kind of work environment, would love to get some insight at a very granular level in terms of how you operate in the workplace with regards to these kinds of skills and whatnot. I guess, how do you prioritize when everything feels urgent? There's deadlines after deadlines. How do you prioritize?
Yeah, I might caveat with I'm not great at it, but it's something that I will continue to work on. Like it is just, yeah, Cristina, you touched on this. Like, it's really difficult starting as a grad and setting up your life, and you're not, it's just a whole different environment, and you're adjusting to that. Just off the back of what you were sharing, Cristina, this idea of like being not feeling like you have to know everything was like really difficult for me to get around, because I did an engineering degree, and you do a math exam and there's a right and wrong answer, and you can't ask questions because that's not how exams are structured. And then I had to kind of become more comfortable with the idea that there was no silly question. I could kind of ask anything, and asking the question was being rewarded, and not asking the question was like there was often consequences to people pretending they know something or going ahead or not wanting to ask the question, and then you end up down the wrong track. I just wanted to share that on that scenario you shared, Joey, about like how do you prioritize when everything is feeling urgent. As I said, not fantastic at it, but what I like to do is share a lot more about what my workload is to other people. I think like no one's trying to throw me off or beat me or punish me. People are just trying to get their thing done. And the thing that I want to say to them, and I paraphrase a friend here who said this last week, is your lack of preparation is not my emergency. I would love to throw that in someone's face, but I would never, because you can't behave like that. But what I do tend to do is probably these three steps. First, I like interrogate the need. Like, what are you asking of me? Why is it important? Why does it need to be done in this timeline? Sometimes people just can't be bothered at that point. If it's not important enough, they won't answer my questions. And I'm like, well, why ask me to do it to begin with? But then I don't have to deal with it. And sometimes I get like actual important information that helps me with the task. And sometimes you find out that the deadline that they're giving you is made up and you actually have another 3 days. So asking those questions at the start has been really valuable to me. If I then find that it's not actually within my scope, or there's no benefit to me to do it, then I will like point them to the right place to do it. Like, oh, I think this team is great to support with this, or let me check with my manager. Maybe my manager can help you with this thing, and kind of push it outside of my scope. If it is within my scope, then I start to share more about what I have going on. Hey, just so you know, I'm really keen to support with this, but I've got these other 3 projects, and they're taking up a lot of my time right now. So like, what's a reasonable way we can, I guess, negotiate a deadline that would be more reasonable and fit within your priorities, your expectations? And then I will commit to that. So I don't want to kind of leave people hanging, but I find if I say to someone, well, sorry, I can't get this done by 5 p.m. today, but I can by Thursday. Is that okay? More often than not, they're like, yeah, that's okay. I can work around that, or that actually fits in nicely. And it gives them confidence and makes them feel really happy that I was able to help, as opposed to feeling like I'm pushing back on them.
It's such a fine balance, hey, because I feel like the natural instinct is to say yes. Of course, you always want to help. You don't want to say no. You're just starting at the organization. You're scared to say no. You don't want to look bad. But I think it's important to say no, because then you don't want to overcommit yourself either. That's something that I learned back when I was doing banking, where everything was due yesterday. And the deadlines were constantly moving and shifting, and you end up quickly saying yes to way too much, and all of a sudden you're not meeting deadlines, and that looks worse than just asking those questions from the very beginning, outlining the priorities. So I think the common theme that we're seeing here is the importance of communication, asking questions, having that confidence to speak to your manager and question the priorities. So I guess back to you, Cristina. Why are these core skill sets so important? Seeking clarity, managing your energy, building that self-awareness. Why are they so important to managing someone's mental health and well-being?
I think And like I said, I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for grads because it is a lot going at the same time, but you sort of really need to get a hold of that. And it's unnecessary stress. You're graduates. We're not expecting you all to solve the big problems of the world. Like, we need you guys there for the long term, for the long run. So it's like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If the grads aren't managing sort of that energy, the performance might still be there, but your well-being will suffer in the background. And I guess your manager may not see that. You really need to, again, communicate. I just cannot emphasize enough is communication and self-awareness. Like Alexander said, I'm happy for you to say yes, but however, I have X, Y, and Z that have hard deadlines. So what you're asking of me, I may get to it for next week. And, as you said, most people are very okay with that, unless it's like a board report that, is due always the week before they even give it to you. So I think, don't carry everything in your own. Turn sort of challenges into shared problems rather than personal ones, which is sort of huge for your mental health. So I've seen grads who don't ask questions and they're carrying this huge mental load. They're working hard, but they're constantly worrying that they've missed something. And I sort of compare them to grads who can kind of say to me, hey, sanity check, what are you thinking? Am I overcommitting? And you could sort of see the very difference in them alone. So just share the load. If you don't share a problem, what's that? I saw a comment come up, but share the load with whoever you can trust, with your manager, with your grad manager, with your peer. And I think it makes it a lot easier on your mental wealth and health.
Now, Nathan's just made a very good point. I think that aligns to both what Cristina and Alex were saying, that if you don't share a problem, it's your problem. But if you share a problem, it's everyone's problem. And you have a better chance of solving it. And communication solves a lot of problems. I think that's very well said from Nathan. But that's just not in the workplace. That's in life. Being able and willing to have those conversations, challenge those deadlines, and ask, where should your priorities be? Now, I guess, Alex, having recently been and still going through this transition yourself, what are the few things that you wish you did earlier, or you could have done earlier to either place yourself better in the workplace or position yourself better with your manager, being willing and open to have those conversations?
Yeah, I came to realize how important the role of a manager is, particularly for a grad early on, because I had a lot of managers in my first year. And there was some changes in the organization, and I had 5 managers in my first year. So you kind of get a taste for different management. I also started in this cohort that I mentioned of 15 to 20 people, and the people who were thriving had fantastic managers. And I kind of look over to them and be like, why are you doing so well? Oh, wait, that's because I've only known my manager for 2 weeks and you've known yours for 8 months. So I get that. I think what I came to learn, kind of looking across all my managers and the managers everyone had, is some managers are really good at bringing in an early in career person and some aren't. And that's not to say some people are like the ones who are good with an early in career person are a good manager. But it's a very specific skill set. You need to know the level of instruction that you need to give someone and the level of support and the kinds of attention that you need to give someone early in career. And not everyone's great at that, and that's fine. What I found helpful when I had managers that weren't as great at that is to coach them and make them really understand why it was important to me to have certain things. For example, I was struggling a little bit with a task, and I went to my manager and said, hey, I need a buddy. Like, I appreciate you might have the time to spend with me to walk me through this, but can you point me to someone else in the business who can walk me through this? And she was very happy to do that at the time because it made me successful and it didn't take up any of her time. So she's like, hey, go talk to that person over there. And that was fantastic. So I think me like making those call outs to my manager, here are the things I need, was really valuable. And then I've also been in horrible spots where I wasn't getting what I needed from my manager. And what I found from that is that a bad manager or a manager isn't giving me the things that I need can be substituted by a good network. And I was then building up this network of people around me who I could ask those questions to in a distributed way. So I wasn't taking up so much of one person's time, but if I needed to know how to put an expense through, I had a buddy I could go to for that. Or if I needed to understand a part of the technology, I had a person I knew I could go to that. And that ended up meaning that I didn't feel like I was on my own or without the right instruction, because the network that I built up around me could really support me in a way that a good, effective manager could.
You know what, Alex, it's such an interesting point, right? Where I think not only are we going on this journey, on this early transition journey, but for a lot of time, these managers are managing for the first time as well. It's the first time they've had a grad in their team, or it's the first time they've been put in a position where they have people who report to them. So they're on this learning journey as well. And I love that point you made before where, it's about that two-way coaching. Not only are they helping you, but you're also helping them. So, kind of guiding them on where you would like to focus your efforts, where you need help, helps them as well. So it's not just the two-way street. I really love the point where you pointed out before. I guess, Cristina, back to you. Where do you see these misunderstandings consistently happening between those early in career professionals and their managers? And how can we, as early in career professionals, overcome those challenges?
Thanks, Joey. I think, again, reiterating, it is also managers who are learning from grads. So you've got to remember that. I feel for my grads because they do rotations. So they do have 4 different managers over their grad program. But again, I try to put them with managers who have managed grads, but I sometimes get it wrong. So they are very patient with me. I think one of the biggest one is around sort of asking questions, right? So a lot of grads and interns assume their manager expects them to be independent straight away. So they don't go to them for questions. However, managers are prepped beforehand and usually expect questions. So, and they see them as a sign of engagement rather than weakness. So if you're asking questions, it's not that they're thinking you don't know anything. It's they're saying, hey, Alexander's actually really into this rotation and he's really trying to understand everything. So what grads and interns can do is, I guess, ask very early and be really quite, I guess, very clear. So, hey, manager, what does good look like for this piece of work? And when do you want me to check in? So just be very simple. Like, you don't have to make it sound, more complicated than what it was. It is. And so that can, just asking that question can prevent weeks of unnecessary stress, right? You kind of know what standard and when. The other one is, I guess, communication and visibility. Some grads and interns think that silence means that everything's good, but managers actually probably interpret the silence as a lack of progress and ownership. So what I would encourage grads to do is just share like super simple updates, whether it be at your stand-ups or over Teams, and like, hey, manager, here's where I'm up to, here's what I'm thinking next, and this is where I might need help. So I think that builds trust and kind of reduces the assumption on both sides. Again, feedback, you're hearing a lot about feedback, but I know grads and interns do love to know how they're going all of the time. So, I think treat it as sort of data and not a verdict, right? So sometimes you guys can hear feedback as I'm not good enough, while managers actually mean it as, hey, I'm investing in your growth, so I want you to set you up, correctly. And then you can sort of ask questions, so that's helpful. Can you show me an example of what it might look like next time? So it turns feedback into sort of like a learning conversation instead of like an emotional and personal, I don't know, I say attack, but, like a personal experience. And finally, I think we've touched on this as well, capacity. Grads and interns, they're very enthusiastic and say yes to everything, assuming that's what managers want to hear and that's what the organization is all about. But unless managers are told, they're going to assume everything's fine and everything that they've asked you to do is going to get done. So I think get in early. Like I said, tell them I can take this on, but I need to prioritize X, or I'm at capacity. What do you think I should, do first? And is there anyone else that can take this work on? It's not a weakness to say that I cannot possibly do any more work. It is not a weakness, but it's a professional skill. So I think grads and interns, you have to remember you're not working for your managers as such. You're sort of learning how to work with them. And as Alexander said, every manager is going to be different, and you're going to meet a lot of different managers. So you need to learn how to work with them. And that happens over time. I'm still learning that, at my stage. So yeah.
So yeah, just add in there. It's particularly hard when everything's virtual and a manager can't see you. You talk about like capacity as an example. I could be at home like drowning in work and like really struggling, and I don't know who to ask the questions to, and I'm just sitting on my own. And a manager's just going about their day. Maybe I don't know, this is maybe a bad example, but let's say they're clocking off early because it's actually quite quiet today. But it's not that they don't care or they're not invested in us succeeding. It's just that they don't know. And it's so helpful to just communicate with them. And it comes back to communication, right? Communicate with them. Hey, I've got this going on. Like, what do you think I should do? Just like a simple conversation, or being in the office, I found has been really valuable as well, because I can turn to them and ask them the question and they go, oh, I didn't know you were working on that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I am. Like, they're like, oh, I didn't actually need that to be done. It was like an offhanded comment I made 2 weeks ago. Yeah, oh, well, I spent a lot of time on this, but that wouldn't happen if it was all virtual. When it's in person, it just makes things like that a lot easier.
And you know what? It's really interesting you bring up that point, Alex, where, sometimes it can be really beneficial to work from home to provide that flexibility and whatnot. But especially when you're still learning, if you're in a new rotation, like at Allianz, for instance, or have just started the organization, there's so many benefits to coming in person as well. Where at least if you have that question, you can, your manager sitting on your left or right, you can turn to them, ask that question straight away, rather than sitting there behind Teams and thinking, oh, should I ask, should I not ask, should I ask? And as you said, they can visually see if you're under the pump, if you need a bit more work. It's those visual cues that really help. And I love the idea also of that granular communication. You're never going to get in trouble for over communicating. Even today, for example, I told my manager on the way down, I said, hey, I'm going to be off desk, from 11:30 to 1. I'll submit what I need to submit when I get back to the desk. So then that way it doesn't look like I'm having an extended lunch or, I'm having coffee around the corner or something. It's about having that granular communication. So then that way at least they're aware of what you're doing, because they also have their own deadlines as well. So trying to manage your deadlines and their deadlines, of course, there's going to be confusion and ambiguity. So being overtly clear with what you need done is so important. Now,
sorry to jump in, Joey. Cristina, we're talking about it as if it's not a bad thing to communicate and ask the questions. But I guess from your perspective, like, what are managers saying to you? Like, is actually a good thing? Like, when they're doing their scorecard or whatever, they're saying this person was asking questions and I'm so glad they were. They're really curious. Like, what does that look like from behind the scenes?
Yeah, no, like I said, the good managers, they expect lots of questions from grads. So they kind of say to me, oh, so I think he's doing fine. Like, I haven't heard from him. I think he's getting through the work. But then Alexander's met with me before that going, Cristina, like, I do not know what I'm doing. I don't know what underwriting is. I don't know what insurance is. Hey, so I think so then I'm kind of having to join the dots for the manager and the grad, whereas that could have just been avoided, right? If the grad had just gone to the manager, okay, I don't know how to do this. Look, I've had grads ask me, Cristina, how do I accept an invite on Outlook? Like, because I noticed I was sending invites and they weren't accepting them. I'm like, guys, I need you to accept invites. Like, I'm planning for an event. I need to know how many. They're like, oh, I just didn't know how to press the accept, or they were doing it but not sending me the response, so I couldn't count numbers. So just something as simple as that. Like I'm like, ask, please ask. Like honestly, managers, like I said, they are happy to help grads out, like great managers. They said they always say to me, I don't mind explaining things as long as it lands. Like if they're setting up the grad for success, that's the most I think that's the best thing a manager could do for a grad. And they don't say, oh God, he's asking so many questions, like what is wrong with him? Where did you find Alexander? No, they want you to ask questions because they want to know that you are invested in understanding what you're doing, because it is all new. So yeah, no managers kind of come to me and said, oh, where did you hire that person? Like they seriously asked me so many questions. No, none. I've never had that feedback ever.
It's good therapy for me too. Thanks, Cristina.
It's interesting. Something I've learned is that as long as you have tried your best to fix whatever issue you're trying to fix, you've exhausted all options, and then it's like, you know what, and you can go to your manager and look, I have tried everything, I'm stuck, I need help. And I think that is where you gain that respect from the manager, where it's like, you know what, that wasn't of course there's no silly questions, but you're not asking about every step, every single question. I think finding that balance between, okay, wanting to try solve it yourself, taking that initiative, but being open to the fact that you're new to the organization. You're not going to know everything. Ask those questions rather than just sitting there for 2 days with your hands in your pockets and being like, oh my God, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do.
You got to play that grad. You got to play that grad card while you can, guys, because it only lasts for a couple of years.
Alex, are you still playing the grad card?
No.
I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I went on mute. I'm pushing it.
Now we've had another.
I mean, like we joke, but it really never changes. Like I moved to a new role a few months ago, and it's the same. Like I asked lots of questions, and I think maybe there's less patience for asking the same question many times. But I think there's a lot of reward in asking the right questions or just asking questions generally and being curious, because my manager, for example, when I ask him questions, he's thinking, oh, Alex is great. He's being curious. He's learning more about the role. He's really succeeding. Versus if I was asking him no questions, he might be sitting there thinking, well, is Alex actually grappling with the role? Is he succeeding? Is he doing well?
100%. And we've had a pretty much along the similar note here from Nathan, again, a really insightful comment where he says, asking questions is a balance between respecting people's time as well as getting work done. Once you know the deadline of your work, you can use that for how long you work on a problem yourself before you ask someone for help. If your question is what your work's priority and deadline is in of itself, ask ASAP. I couldn't agree more with that, Nathan. The moment you get a project, that should be the first question. When does this need doing by? Who do I need to send it to? Those are 100% the first questions that should be asked. Now, I am conscious of time here. We're going to jump towards the conclusion and ask one or two quick fire questions here of our panelists whilst we still have the chance. Now, Cristina, from your experience, what are some of the early signs that early career professionals and employees can look for in themselves to suggest that overall and holistically their well-being may be starting to slip, even if their performance still looks fine, they're asking managers the right questions? What can be those warning signs about well-being?
A great question. I think this is for not just early in career, but us who are late in our career. I think the signs, look, in this world that we work in, the hybrid work, I think it's another layer of complexity for well-being, because we're not always in the office and I don't physically see the grads every day. But I think some signs, fairly obvious would probably be mental fatigue. If you're constantly just, your brain is tired, self-doubt's another one, just overthinking, going, oh, am I doing this right? Is this right? Or is there another way to do this? So I think those are some sort of early signs. Now I'm always irritable because I've got 3 kids, but for you grads and interns, if you're sort of feeling flat and irritable and disconnected, I think that's probably a sign that your well-being might be slipping. The other one, which is easy to do when you're working from home, is sort of that boundary creep. It's working longer hours, right? Logging on, logging off at 9 p.m., constantly thinking about work, guilt if you take a break or step away from your laptop because you're at home. So that's sort of what you've got to look out for. I don't think, these signs aren't weak. They're not weaknesses. So for all grads and interns, it's just, it is a sort of indicator of long-term resilience. So sometimes I notice grads saying, I'm fine, I'm just tired, but they're always tired. I'm like, no, that unless you're, I don't know, have a second or third job, like that's not right. We need to sort of look at that and see what's happening, whether they're running on empty. So you've kind of got to listen to your body, listen to your mind, and stop and think and ask someone, hey, is this kind of normal?
It's such an interesting point you make, Cristina, about listening to your body. I had the opportunity to speak to one of our A380 pilots a few weeks ago here at Qantas, and you can imagine that they're flying around the world, different time zones, different sleep schedules. And I said to him, I asked him, I said, how do you manage your well-being, and your mental health when you're up and down, you're in the air, you're away from family, you're in new cities? And some of the best words of advice he said to me were that he sleeps when he's tired, he eats when he's hungry, he rests when he needs to. He listens to his body, and could not agree more with your point just there. So I think now we're going to pop across to Q&A. We've got so many of you on this call. We're so lucky to have such a big attendance today. Would love it's your turn now to ask our 2 panelists any question. There's no, as we've said throughout this panel, there's no silly questions. Please ask away. Whilst those questions come through, I guess a question that I have for the both of you, quick fire question, that if there's one wellbeing tool or habit or skill set that you'd encourage everyone on this call to have as an early in career professional, what should they try this week? What can they implement after this call, after lunch?
Only one.
I know, just one.
That's hard. I'd say there's a lot. I think for me, the thing that has worked more than anything for my well-being and sanity at work is the network of people that I built around me. So investing in the people around you, really key, if I had to pick just one. And that means friends, like peers in the early in career network, both because it just keeps me sane, and it also means that I have all this organizational knowledge and I know what people in other teams are doing. And actually, it ends up bringing value back to my team because I can be like, oh, they're working on this project, and my boss is like, oh, I didn't know that. Friends, buddies, to ask questions like, how do I accept a meeting invite? Just people who have done it for a couple of years and they get it and they can explain to me like the really trivial things. What time do we get lunch? Something I didn't know when I started. And then you've got a coach, like someone who understands the organization, can help you hustle, and also like help you set boundaries and set those protections around you. And then a mentor and sponsor, probably more so on the career side rather than the well-being side. But just having this network of people that surround you, I think is the best thing that you can do for your well-being and success at work.
Great answer. I love that all of those we have for our grads, so buddy, a sponsor, like a kind of check-in person. So yeah, I think network is important for the grads and interns. For me, I guess something that might sound a bit, I don't know, as my kids would say, cringy, but I think it works. I don't know about you guys, but on a Friday, Allianz seems a little quieter than the rest of the week. So I think, it's a good probably time to do like just a check-in, really, just on yourself. Don't have to do it with anyone else, but just ask yourself sort of, okay, this week, kind of what gave me energy this week? What drained my energy this week? And what's one small thing I can adjust or ask for next week. Just it kind of just keeps you accountable and, you know, sort of in touch with what has happened that week or how you're feeling. And it might help you catch something early on, and, you know, then it doesn't spiral into a sort of a bigger thing. That's it.
Now, we've been lucky enough to have a few questions from the audience. We're going to kick things off with Miles from Allianz. They'd like to know suggestions for managing information overload. I know as grads, as interns, it can be a lot. It can be a lot very fast. Day one, week one, month one. You're getting thrown different pieces of information, different stakeholders, different projects. Tips for managing information overload.
I can share what I do, and I think that probably the key thing is not to put pressure on yourself to get it all. Like there's, for example, in Microsoft, there are, and probably most companies, there's a million acronyms, and it is actually just impossible to know all of them. And I don't know, like you put pressure on yourself to understand it and understand how everything kind of comes together and what this acronym means and what this team this person works in, and lots of it is helpful information once you found your feet, but isn't necessary off the like at the start. So I'd say, yeah, don't put pressure on yourself and focus on the things that you need now to be successful now, rather than consuming everything, because our brains just aren't capable of that. Cristina, anything you want to add?
The acronyms are a killer, aren't they? The acronyms are a killer. And then they change depending on the business unit as well. There'll be one acronym for your team, and then you use the same acronym for another team, and it means something different. That's the hardest part by far.
The struggle is real. We used to have like a acronym bot at IBM where you could type an acronym and it would spit out what it meant, but you'd have to pick. But no, it is I think information overload is sort of for everyone. I find personally, if it's a Teams meeting, I will always record it or transcribe it so I don't forget what was said. If it's a face-to-face conversation, that might be a little bit difficult, but I think Nathan's kind of said, yeah, like record what you can, write things down. If there's something that was mentioned that you're unsure of, just ask someone else who was in that meeting or go, hey, what was that about? But always, I think that's really good advice, Nathan, but always have like a phone or notepad or laptop ready. I know, I think my manager made a comment, one of the grads had a meeting with her and she kind of just came in empty-handed. She's like, oh, okay. So you don't have anything to write on? And the grad's like, oh, I've got my phone. But I think just old school, just record things and ask. And there's always the intranet. I find with grads, I send them long emails with links and I'm like, please refer to this email for the rest of your life at Allianz because it's got everything you will ever need. So yeah.
Now, guys, I'm conscious of time and conscious of me getting kicked out of this room in 5 minutes. So we've got one final question from the audience that comes from Anthony from BeyondSoft. And they are asking, and I guess we'll just get one of you to answer, conscious of time, but obviously that we've had a big environmental shift recently with regard to the landscape that we work in. AI has dominated the headlines recently, has significantly changed the way of working at most organizations. And naturally, there's going to be more changes to come in the technology space, in the organizational space. And I guess Anthony's question is, how do we navigate that ambiguity in our professions? How do we, navigate that landscape in jobs that are evolving faster than we can predict? And how do we manage that ambiguity? It's a big question for a little amount of time, but
Alexandra, you want to take this or?
Yeah, I can. So, I mean, I work in AI, so I kind of see a lot of it, and I see how people react when I speak to them about AI. The people who are best positioned are people who are curious and really comfortable adapting. And I think it's just a matter of getting on the tools and understanding them better than other people. And as early in careers, we're uniquely positioned to do that because we enjoy jumping on tech and we're digital natives and we can quickly grapple something and we don't have set ways of working. So I think we're in a good position versus a lot of other people who have years of experience. How do we navigate the stress that comes from that? It's challenging, but just understanding it and being comfortable with our ability to shift with it, I think is probably a key there. Cristina, do you want to quickly add something in or?
No, I think that's fair, especially in insurance. We're very risk adverse. So AI, everyone's freaking out. I'm like, guys, just go with the flow. So now they've actually just said, look, embrace it. We will use it. We will learn. We're all doing courses on data camp, even though I am not technical. We're all required to do a certain number of hours learning on data, AI. So I think just keep yourself relevant, right? Keep your skills relevant. Anthony, is it? Oh, Alan. And just keep learning and building up your sort of repertoire of your CV of skills, and you're never going to be made sort of redundant or irrelevant if you're up to date with that.
The term we love using here is, the importance of future-proofing yourself. Making sure that you're consistently adding value, making sure that you have that unique selling proposition, so then that way, when changes do occur, that the organization can see the value that you bring to the company. And I think we've got time for one more question. And we've been lucky enough to have a question from Cassandra from Allianz. And she said that she sometimes worries that she is complaining rather than genuinely raising a problem with her manager. And I guess from your perspectives, what actually sounds like a constructive issue versus a complaint?
So I responded to her in the chat. I thought we weren't going to have time, but I think it's never going to sound like a complaint if you take your emotion out of it, back up your whatever it is, whatever your situation is, back it up with data, with clear facts. Like, just take all emotion out of the conversation, and it will always come across, I think, as a genuine sort of not complaint. That's my advice, which is difficult sometimes when it's about you.
And as we were talking about before, play that grad card, right? No manager is ever going to penalize you for asking too many questions. They want you to ask questions. You're there to learn. That's the whole point of an internship, of a grad program. And as a good point out there, we actually do have a really good webinar online on agility that you'll be able to find on the CMHAA website. Now, guys, thank you so much, everyone in the audience, for joining today. Thank you to Cristina. Thank you to Alexander for sharing your experiences so openly, not just the successes, but the realities of navigating that early career transition. Those relationships, the well-being aspects, and your insights overall have made this conversation feel practical, feel relevant, and most importantly, assuring to the future early in career professionals. Now, our work at the CMHAA and within the EIC committees is only possible because of the audience engagement. So thank you for your engagement, your questions, for taking the time out of your busy days. I know how busy everyone is to invest in your growth and well-being. Hopefully you guys can grab a bite to eat, get out quickly for lunch. And most importantly, if you'd like to learn more about what the CMHAA does, what the early in career committees do, or you'd like to get involved or access our free resources, please head to our website, which is cmhaa.org.au. The link is on your screens as we speak. There you'll find a whole range of tools, insights, information about upcoming initiatives, and more importantly, upcoming events that you can come to. So guys, thank you again for being a part of today's sessions. A big thank you to Alex and Cristina, and hopefully on behalf of CMHAA, we can see you back to one of these events very soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your expert hosting, Joey.
Well done.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
And everyone behind the scenes who helped put this
Yes,
together.
big shout out. Big shout out.